The stairwell above her head shook as if a giant had struck it with a hammer. Dust and lime sifted down on the stretchers. Someone whimpered. Zofia pressed her palm over the woman's mouth, gentle but firm. "Quiet now," she whispered in Polish. "They are on the second floor." Boots thudded overhead, hard soles on broken boards. German voices barked, clipped and irritated, the sound of men clearing a house that should have been empty hours ago. The smell of burned timber drifted in through the cellar door, mixed with disinfectant and the sweet rot of bandages that hadn't been changed. At the far end of the cellar, 10 men lay on makeshift cots, one without a leg, one with his chest bandaged to the neck, one barely conscious. None of them could be moved. All of them watched her. A crackle, then the unmistakable hiss of a flamethrower priming somewhere in the street. The runner's voice came through the little hole in the wall, urgent, a boy's voice trying to be a man's. "Sister Zofia, you must go now. Take the book through the sewer. Do you understand?" She looked from the gap to the rows of eyes. No one spoke. The boots were coming down the stairs. The ledger was under her apron, warm from her body. She did not move. 48 hours earlier, Warsaw, Śródmieście district, 14th and September 1944. The rain had finally stopped, but the city still dripped. In the courtyard of the shattered tenement, water ran in thin lines down cracked plaster, carrying soot with it. Zofia crossed under the archway with her satchel hugged to her side, headscarf pulled low to hide the AK armband. The street beyond was no longer a street, only a channel of rubble between facades that had lost their faces. A dead tram lay on its side like an animal. Somewhere close, a German machine gun fired a short, indifferent burst. She kept moving. To stop in the open was to invite a sniper's curiosity. The entrance to their cellar ward was disguised as a coal chute. She knocked once, twice, then 3 short raps. Inside, the bolt scraped, and a girl of 16, Helena, red-eyed from lack of sleep, lifted the hatch. "You're late," Helena whispered. "There was a patrol near Marszałkowska," Zofia said, squeezing through, "and a building on fire. I had to wait." The smell hit her first, as always, damp earth, alcohol, sweat, old blood. Candles burned in glass jars on shelves. People coughed in the shadows. The ceiling was low, lined with beams scavenged from somewhere else. On a table at the center, Dr. Wysocki leaned over a boy with a leg wound, jaw tight, gray hair plastered to his temple. "You're back," he said without looking up. "Good. We lost 2 from the northern cellar. Bomb fragments." Zofia shrugged off her coat, grabbed the basin, and began washing her hands in cold, cloudy water. Fingers numb, she worked fast, letting the movement steady her. Gauze, needle, thread. She didn't ask about the 2. If they were gone, they were gone. "Any word from command?" she asked. Wysocki wiped his hands on a rag. "Command?" He gave a short, humorless breath. "Command is in a basement like ours, waiting to be shelled. But yes, they sent this." He reached under the table and pulled out a notebook wrapped in brown paper. The paper was spotted with water, maybe blood. He set it down as if it were glass. "For you," he said. Zofia stared at it. "For me?" "You move between points. You are not tied to a bed like I am." His eyes met hers, pale and heavy. "They have lost track of who lies where, of who needs what. This is the registry for Śródmieście East. Names, wounds, blood groups, some fighters, some civilians. If this is captured, they will go house to house and finish them." The cellar seemed to shrink. Candles guttered. The notebook could have been a brick on her chest. "I am only a nurse," she said, and heard the thinness in her own voice. "You are the one who still walks," Wysocki said. That makes you more useful than any of us." She looked around. On the cots, men watched them, hollow-eyed. A woman with a bandaged scalp tried to quiet her baby. Helena rocked on her heels, waiting for orders. Outside, distant artillery rumbled like approaching weather. Zofia reached for the notebook. The cover was damp, the pages thick. Someone had written carefully, in ink that had begun to run, surname, name, year of birth, unit, wound, location. Next to some names, a single red cross. Next to others, nothing. She imagined each line as a face in a dark room, waiting. "Keep it on you," Waisaki said. "If the cellar is hit, it must not burn here." "It will be safer here than on you," he repeated. "We may not wake up from the next barrage. You will." There was no arguing with that. In the uprising, survival itself was a kind of rank. She slid the notebook under her apron, between blouse and skin. It was cold at first, then warmed. She tied her coat over it, feeling the extra thickness. Heavy, yes, but it was also real. A task. Helena cleared her throat. "There's word," she said. "The Germans are pushing from the river again. They are burning houses." Zofia took a breath that did not quite fill her lungs. "Then we work faster," she said, "and quieter." Above them, a faint siren started to wail, then cut off, as if the city itself had run out of breath. The sky over Warsaw was the color of wet ash. Smoke from a burning block to the north drifted low through the streets, giving the illusion of fog. Zofia slipped out of the courtyard and hugged the wall, keeping her headscarf pulled over her brow, her steps deliberate. The notebook under her apron dug into her ribs when she breathed too hard. The route to the sector command wasn't long on a map. In 1938 it would have been 10 minutes at a walk, past shops, past the tram stop. In September 1944, it was a jagged corridor of broken facades, courtyards, and gaps where houses had become craters. You didn't walk in a straight line anymore. You threaded, you listened, you waited. She paused at the first corner. From somewhere ahead came the rumble of a German engine, not a tank, something lighter, maybe an armored car, and the sharper sound of shouted German. She flattened to the wall, feeling the cold, damp bricks through her coat. Her heart thudded. If they were sweeping again, she would have to circle through the back lanes. A boy of 12 darted across the street carrying a pot. A Polish woman yelled at him from a doorway. No shot came, so no sniper on that line, at least for the moment. Zofia moved. The cobbles were slick from rain and ash. Twice she had to cross open gaps where balconies had fallen. She kept her eyes on upper windows. That was where you saw the helmets first. Each time she stepped into the open, her body waited for the punch of a round between the shoulders. None came. Only the thrum of distant artillery and, farther off, the flat roar of a flamethrower at work. The tenement that housed the sector medic looked as if a giant hand had scooped out its middle. The street door was gone. She slipped inside and found the staircase still holding, though the railings were splintered. On the landing sat an AK sentry with a Sten across his knees. His eyes were rimmed red. He looked her up and down. "Medic?" he asked softly. "Nurse. From Śródmieście East. For the doctor." He nodded toward the back. "Second floor, rear flat. Be quick. They are close today." On the second floor, plaster lay everywhere. Someone had hung a blanket over a doorway to make a room. Behind it, 3 people in AK armbands bent over a city plan lit by a single paraffin lamp. The smell of the lamp mingled with damp coal and wet boots. A man in a worn officer's coat, gray-stubbled, eyes sunk deep, looked up. "Lewandowska?" "Yes." "You have it?" She patted her apron. "Safe. Good." He didn't smile. No one smiled anymore. He tapped the map. "Listen carefully. We have wounded in 3 pockets. Here, here, and here." His finger moved over Shrodmishchi like it was still whole. "Central cannot move. We have no stretchers, no cart, and the Germans are firing down Marsokovska. We need a person who can move under cover and tell each point what the others have. Blood groups, doctors, morphine. We cannot waste anything." Zofia's throat tightened. "I am assigned to Dr. Waisaki's cellar." "You were," the officer said. "Now you are assigned to mine." He met her eyes so she would understand there was no protest. "You can walk. You know the cellars. You don't panic when they shell. That makes you liaison." It was that simple. In another army, there would have been papers, signatures. In Warsaw, breathing and standing upright was your qualification. "What if they start burning this quarter?" she asked. "If I am caught?" "Then you eat the pages," he said without hesitation. "Better ash than in German hands." The lamp flickered. Outside, a machine gun rattled again, closer this time. She imagined trying to chew thick Polish paper while SS boots came down the stairs. Her stomach turned. "You could give this to a runner," she said, grasping at the last thread. "A boy. They move faster." "A boy will drop it when he is frightened," the officer said. "You won't." There it was, the insult and the compliment in one breath. "You are older, you are tired, and so you are dependable." She inhaled, slow, feeling the ledger press into her. This, then, was the shape of the day. Not one cellar, but 3. Not one set of eyes on her, but many. Any mistake and a man somewhere in a dark basement would bleed out because she had miscopied a blood group. "All right," she said. Her voice did not shake. "Tell me the routes." They showed her the courtyards, the breached walls, the pump that still worked, the sewer grating that opened if you kicked it twice. Every line they traced was a place she could die. Every line was also a place she was now expected to appear. As she left, the officer called after her, softer, almost kind. "Sister." She stopped in the doorway. "No one will know you did this," he said. "If it works, they will say the sector was organized. If it fails, they will say the medics were overrun. Either way, it will not be your name." Zofia looked back at him through the hanging blanket, seeing him in the lamplight, a man worn down to will. "I know," she said. Outside, the wind carried smoke through the stairwell. She pulled her scarf up again and started back into the broken city. The rain had turned the rubble soft. Not mud. Warsaw didn't have enough earth left for mud, but a paste of plaster, ash, and charcoal that clung to boots and made every step loud if you weren't careful. Zofia took the back exit from the tenement and cut across a yard where laundry still hung, blackened over a fallen fence. A cat watched her from under a cart, eyes wide, fur dusty. She kept low, the satchel slung forward so she could get to bandages quickly. Under the apron, the notebook sat like a slab against her stomach. The destination was 2 blocks west, in what used to be a printing house. Now it was just a basement with a staircase half collapsed, and 14 people inside, according to the officer. She had to get there, count them, tell them what morphine remained in the central point, and bring back their worst cases for possible transfer. That was the task. Tasks were good. Tasks left no space for thinking about the sound of flamethrowers. She reached the gate to the next courtyard and froze. German voices close. Not shouting this time, but the conversational tone of men at work. Through the broken slats, she glimpsed gray uniforms in the street. An MG team dragging its weapon, a man with field cap and pistol at his belt. They were sweeping doors, checking for movement. One of them laughed. Sophia pulled back into the shadow of the arch, breath shallow. If they came into the yard, she had nowhere to go but up, and upper floors were where snipers died. She looked around. To her right, a coal shed. To her left, a narrow gap between buildings half choked with bricks. She slid into the gap. Cold plaster scraped her coat. Her shoulder bumped brick. She turned sideways, inching through. Behind her ribs, the ledger shifted. For a wild moment she imagined simply pulling it out, tucking it under a loose floorboard here, retrieving it later when the street was clear. It would be safer than having it found on her body. If they searched her, they would know exactly what she was. Outside, boots on cobble. A German said something about cellar. They were checking basements. Her hand went to the apron ties. No, if she left it here and a shell took the wall, it would burn. If someone starving found it, they might trade it. If she were shot in the street but the ledger was on her, maybe an AK boy could drag it off her. On her, it still had a chance to move. Hidden, it was already dead. She tightened the apron again, pressing the book hard against her. The Germans passed the gate without coming in. One of them spat. The MG team stopped to rest. She listened to the scrape of metal on stone, to their tired laughter, to the clink of gear, men who were winning the street, who could afford to talk. When the sound diminished, she eased out of the gap and darted across the courtyard to the back door of the next house. Inside, it smelled of wet wallpaper and old cabbage. A crucifix still hung in the hallway, tilted. She moved through the flat, boots silent on scattered newspapers, and found the breach in the back wall the officer had mentioned. A hole knocked through to the neighboring building's pantry. Beyond it, a flight of steps led down. "Who's there?" a man hissed in Polish. "Medical, Śródmieście East." There was a pause, too long, and then a lantern's faint glow. A young man in a blood-stained shirt, arm in a sling, blinked up at her. Behind him, the basement opened out into a low room filled with pallets, blankets, faces. "You made it," he said, half in disbelief. "I was told you had 14. 17 now. 3 came in from the street. 17. The number changed everything. 17 wounds to classify. 17 mouths in a city that had stopped producing food." She knelt, pulled out her pencil, opened the ledger across her knees. The room fell quiet as she wrote. Names, wounds, cellar coordinates. To them it must have looked like salvation, being written down, made official, becoming part of a system that still knew they existed. To her it looked like weight. Every line was another reason Germans could not read this book. "Will they move us?" an older woman asked. "They said maybe tonight." "Roots are bad," Sophia said, not unkindly. "We have to keep you dark. No fires, no noise. We know you are here." The woman nodded, though disappointment sagged her shoulders. Sophia finished the last name, blew on the page, then folded the notebook shut and slipped it back under her apron. The boy with the sling watched her do it. "You carry it?" he whispered. "On the street?" "Yes." "That's dangerous." She looked at him, young, too pale, eyes still bright from being alive when others weren't. "So is bleeding in a cellar," she said. "This way at least one of us is moving." Above them, distant boots again. The city did not intend to make this easy. They brought them in on doors, not stretchers. No one had stretchers anymore, but interior doors blown off hinges, tabletops, even a section of a shop sign. 4 men staggered through the courtyard with 1, then 2, then a third wounded, boots slipping on wet stone. Smoke rolled in behind them from the street. Someone yelled that the Germans were laying fire on the corner again. Someone else was crying. Zofia was already at the cellar hatch, sleeves rolled, apron tied tight over her coat. "Slow down," she said. "One at a time. I need to see faces first." The first man they brought was a fighter, AK armband blackened, trouser legs soaked dark, shrapnel, upper thigh, bleeding but not spurting. He clenched his jaw, staring at the sky as if not to give the Germans satisfaction. Good lungs, good color. He could wait. "Set him there," Zofia pointed to the left wall. "Pressure on the wound. Helena. Cloth." The second was not a fighter. A woman in her 40s, hair burned at one side, dress torn, ankle at a bad angle. Her eyes were wild. "My son," she gasped. "My son was—" "We will look," Zofia said, already moving to the third. The third was the problem. Officer. Even under dust and blood she saw it. The better-cut jacket, the boots, the way the men carried him with a care that said he mattered. His chest was bandaged in haste, but blood had already soaked through. One of the fighters hauling him looked straight at Zofia. "He's Captain Radecki," he said, panting. "From the third. We can't lose him." The cellar could not take all three at once. Space was already bodies and crates. Air was scarce. If they tried to cram everyone down, they would block the hatch and die slower. "Are there more coming?" Zofia asked. "Two dead in the street. House collapsed," the fighter said. "They are burning it now." So this was it. A block hit, people running, and whatever washed down ended up at her door. "Listen to me," Zofia said louder, cutting through crying and boots. "We move the officer first, then the man with shrapnel, civilians after." The burned woman stared. "My leg! I cannot walk." "You will go down," Zofia said, "but he goes now." The fighters didn't wait for further blessing. They started down the steep cellar steps with Radecki, careful not to knock his head. Below, voices shouted to make room. The woman grabbed Zofia's sleeve. Fingers dug in. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "They will shoot. They are already there. I heard them." Zofia looked toward the street. Through the arch, she saw gray movement, smoke curling around German boots. The MG was set somewhere close. She heard the metallic preparation, the discipline. If they tried to bring everyone now, the line of wounded would be visible. "We have to clear the officer before they see," Zofia said. "If they see a wounded officer, they will search every basement." The woman shook her head, not understanding or not wanting to. "I am Polish, too." "So am I," Zofia said, and it came out harder than she meant. Behind the woman, a boy of maybe 17 sat propped against the door they'd carried him on. His lips were blue. He held his side with both hands, and blood seeped between his fingers. "God," Zofia muttered, moving to him. "What happened?" "Wall," he whispered. "Fell." She opened his coat. Not good. Not something she could fix in a yard with Germans 30 meters away. She looked back toward the steps. The men were coming up, lighter now, having dropped Radecki below. One of them, a big fellow with a bandage over his ear, said, "Next." Zofia's eyes flicked between the burned woman, the boy, and the man with shrapnel waiting by the wall. In her apron, the ledger felt like accusation. All these names, and only so many arms. "The shrapnel man goes," she said. "He can be saved quickly and will walk after." Then the boy. "The woman?" Helena asked. Zofia swallowed. The woman's eyes were fixed on her face like on a priest. "She stays until the street is clear," Zofia said. "We can't have a queue. Germans are close." It was the right decision tactically. A wounded officer saved morale, saved cohesion. A young fighter with shrapnel could return to carry others. A civilian with a bad ankle could wait 5 minutes. But the woman heard only the first half. Her mouth opened in a wail. She clapped over quickly when Zofia hissed, "Silence!" In the street, a German shouted. Boots ran past. The MG clattered, short, controlled bursts. A neighbor screamed, and then the scream cut off. Helena's face was white. "They will think you're cruel," she whispered. "They can think," Zofia said. "They can live to think." Inside, the men took the shrapnel fighter down. Zofia knelt beside the boy, pressing hard on his side, making him grit his teeth. "This will hurt," she said. "It already does," he breathed. In her head, a voice cool and trained kept count. One captain, one fighter, one boy pending, one civilian delayed. 4 lives shuffled like pieces because the street was full of Germans. Irreversible. The woman would tell others. The nurse chose the officer. And it would be true. But in a city being choked to death, somebody had to choose. "Tell her," Zofia said to Helena, nodding toward the woman, "that when it is quiet, we take her down. Tell her we know she is here." Helena nodded, eyes bright. Zofia kept pressure on the boy's wound and listened to the MG chew at the street, praying the Germans would pass without looking into their yard. The entrance to the sewer was a square of black in the corner of a courtyard, no one used anymore. The lid was half off already, disguised with a broken crate and 2 sandbags. The boy who'd shown it to her earlier, the same one who'd called Sister Zofia through the wall the day of the raid, waited with a carbide lamp and eyes too big for his face. "They said tonight," he whispered. "Before dawn. Streets are bad." Zofia glanced up. The city was in enforced darkness, only the dull glow of fires to the north. The night smelled of wet brick and smoke. Somewhere a German truck backfired. Somewhere else a dog barked and was silenced. Surface was unpredictable now. In the sewer, at least, you knew what tried to kill you. "All right," she said. "Give me the lamp." He hesitated. If they flood, keep the lid loose." She crouched, feeling the ledger under her apron, bound tight. "If I don't knock in 20 minutes, close it." He didn't like that, but he nodded. Children in Warsaw were good at nodding to bad orders. She swung her legs over the hole, found the iron rungs with her boots, and climbed down. The smell hit her throat like a fist. Rot, human waste, stagnant water, old gas. She swallowed it, pressing her mouth into the crook of her arm. At the bottom, water to her shins, cold enough to make her knees ache. The lamp spat and hissed, throwing a weak, yellowish cone along the tunnel. She closed the lid above her. Silence. Then the far-away, muffled city. Shells like someone dropping barrels 3 houses away, trucks like insects, boots like heartbeats through stone. The tunnel was just high enough for her to stoop. Brick walls sweated. Water lapped and ran, carrying scraps of paper, a child's shoe, things she refused to identify. Rats skittered ahead of her, eyes flashing in the lamplight. She moved. Each step was a gamble. Was the floor still there, or had a shell somewhere collapsed it? Twice she hit uneven stones and lurched, one hand flying to the ledger under her apron. If she slipped and fell full into the water, the book would soak through. Ink would run. Names would become blurred ghosts. She slowed, breath loud in the enclosed space. "This is foolish," a cold voice said. "This is a book. You should have divided it. You should have copied it. You should have insisted on a runner. But who had ink? Who had paper? Who had time?" She stopped at an intersection, one tunnel going straight, one canted off toward the river. Moist air moved faintly from the left. River direction. She needed to go right, inland, toward the kitchens and cellars that still had people. She set the lamp on a ledge and, for the first time, pulled the ledger out, The air down here was so wet, her hair clung to her temples. Her hands shook. She hated exposing the pages, but if the lamp failed, she would have nothing. She opened to the last entries she had made. The printing house cellar, 17, northern tenement, 9, Śródmieście East, the main ward, full. Names, Krochik, M. Chest wound, immobile. Błaszczyk, H. Compound fracture, cannot be moved. Pelagia, civilian. Scalp, shock. She stared at them. Then she began to say them. Not aloud. Her lips barely moved, words a ghost against her teeth. Krochik, chest, cannot move. Śródmieście East. Błaszczyk, fracture, immobile. Pelagia, scalp, shock. Over and over, linking each to a place in the city. To the smell of that room, to the face, to the sound the cellar door made. If the book falls, remember. If water comes, remember. If you are searched and they take it, remember. Water gurgled somewhere ahead, a low, unnatural sound. Her skin prickled. Germans sometimes flooded sections to push out insurgents using them for movement. If the boy above was wrong about the timing, she shoved the ledger back, wrapped it in her coat as well as her apron, and lifted the lamp. The tunnel ahead sloped lower. She had to bend more, back burning. Water rose to her knees, cold soaked through stockings. A smell of petrol, faint, made her pause. Were they adding fuel to the water? She listened hard. Nothing, only the city breathing overhead. She moved faster, splashing now, hating the sound, but needing to be past the low section before anything changed. The lamp hissed. She held it high, eyes narrowed. Brick curved overhead like a throat. In her head, 17, printing house. 9, northern tenement. 10 plus 2, immobile, main ward. Captain Radecki, chest, priority. Burned civilian, ankle, delayed. She tied them to numbers, 17, 9, 12, Radecki, 1. A pattern to pull later. Memory as extra ribs. That was the moment, she knew, when the burden stopped being Poland's and became hers. A trickle of water ran stronger from the side tunnel, cold, fast. She squeezed past, back scraping brick, and finally saw the vertical shaft that meant she was close to the receiving point. A ladder of corroded iron and a faint square of darker dark above. She blew out the lamp to save Am Fuel, stood for a count of 10 in total black, and repeated the names again. Then she climbed. When she pushed up the lid, night air rushed in, cold, smoky, blessed. She emerged into another courtyard, this one nearer the central point. A man with a pistol and a scarf over his face grabbed her forearm. "You made it," he said. "Of course," Sophia said, breathless, soaked to the waist. "We have 17 more now, and 3 unmovable." "You wrote it?" "I memorized it," she said, and heard how strange that sounded, how mad. "In case the book drowns." The man stared at her like she was the bravest or the most exhausted person he'd seen that day. "Then we will not drown it," he said. She pulled herself fully out of the hole, water dripping off her skirt, ledger still warm against her stomach, the names of strangers beating in her skull like a second heart. They came at noon, when the city was slow and sticky with smoke, when everyone's nerves sagged. Sophia had just finished changing the dressing on the boy from the collapsed house when the first shout echoed down the stairwell, German, hard and official, followed by the slam of a rifle butt on a door. Helena's head snapped up. The patients looked at her the way drowning men look at shore. "Down," Sophia said. "Everyone who can, down and quiet." Dr. Wysocki was asleep sitting up, chin on chest. She shook him once. "Germans." He woke with a grunt, eyes fogged. "Papers?" "They will not care about papers." She turned to Helena. "Lamp low. No talking. Hide the armbands." The cellar seemed suddenly too bright, too loud. the smell of blood too fresh. She moved fast, shoving a crate to cover one of the AK uniforms hanging to dry. Helena tucked 2 pistols under a blanket on a civilian's bed. The boy tried to lift his head, winced. Above, boots on stairs, not the loose tread of tired Wehrmacht line infantry. This was the clipped cadence of men who expected to be obeyed. A second voice spoke Polish with a heavy accent. "Cellars! Open!" Zofia wiped her hands on her apron, felt the ledger warm against her belly, and went to the bottom of the stairs. The door burst inward. 2 men in field gray, helmets on, rifles ready. Behind them, an NCO in a black leather coat, SS or at least police attached to them, face flushed from the climb, pistol on his belt. The air that came in with them smelled of wet leather, petrol, and burned plaster. The first soldier swept the room with his rifle. The second frowned. "Wiele," he muttered. "Many." Zofia raised both hands, palms clean. "Wounded," she said in German, careful, formal. "Civil, wounded civilians." The NCO's eyes slid over her to the cots. "Uprising here," he said in halting Polish. "Bandits." He jabbed a finger toward the back. "Where? Men?" "Air raid," Zofia said in German, keeping her voice level. "Bombs. We take anyone. Old, women, no partisans here." It was almost true. Right now, on the visible cots, there were in fact 3 civilians, 1 burned woman they had finally brought down, an old man with a leg like wood, and 2 children. But further back, behind a sheet, lay Captain Radecki and the boy with the crushed side, the ones the Germans would shoot on sight or drag away. The NCO stepped further in, boots leaving wet prints on the stone. He was close enough now for her to smell his cigarette breath. His eyes were pale and bored, the eyes of someone doing a hated task. He hooked his thumb at the sheet. "Open." Zofia did not let herself look at the sheet. "He is dying," she said. "Typhus." The soldiers shifted. Even Germans didn't like typhus cellars. "Show," the NCO said anyway. She let herself sigh sharply, as if put upon, and crossed to the sheet. Her heart was beating so loudly she was afraid the boy behind it would hear and start to cry. As she drew the blanket aside, she let it hang just enough to block the legs of the bed. Captain Radecki lay still, eyes closed, chest bandaged. The boy lay beside him, also still. Zofia put her hand on Radecki's forehead like a nurse checking fever. "High," she said. "Very infectious." The NCO leaned, but not too far. His lip curled. "Partisan?" "No," Zofia said, dropping her gaze as if ashamed of poverty. "Not rebellion." "Officer from before. War shot. We keep him only because he was officer. He cannot move." It was a risk, invoking old Polish officer class in front of Germans. But sometimes their respect for hierarchy, even a defeated one, made them less eager to waste a sick man. The NCO snorted. "Too many," he said. "We heard shots from this house." "Street," Zofia said at once. "Your men. We do not shoot. We have no weapons. Search." He gestured. The 2 soldiers moved, poking under benches with rifle barrels, kicking at baskets. One of them nearly stepped toward the blanket where Helena had hidden the pistols. Zofia's mouth went dry. If he found them, it was over. "Not there," she said, sharp, nurse to soldier. "Children." The soldier paused, looked at the lump on the cot. A small girl, real enough, hair bandaged, and, not wanting to be the man who upset a sick child, skipped it. "We will?" the NCO asked, turning back to her. "How many in total?" Here it was. The moment. Tell him 17, the real count, and he would remember. Next time, if he found 18, he would drag them out. Tell him 11, and 6 would become shadows, existing only in her book. "Elf?" Zofia said. 11, All wounded. All cannot walk. The NCO wrote nothing. He was the kind who kept it in his head. He looked over the room one more time, eyes lingering on the old man, on the burned woman. Nothing here worth a bullet. His face said, "Tomorrow we clear street," he said in Polish. "You take them out." She lowered her eyes. "If the street is safe." "If not, we burn," he said, almost conversationally. "You understand." He turned and went back up, boots on stone, soldiers behind him. The door scraped shut. The cellar held its breath until the footsteps were gone. Then sound rushed back, a child's thin cry, Helena's gulped sob, the burned woman's prayer. Zofia exhaled so hard her knees shook. She put a hand on the wall to steady herself. Wysocki looked at her over the top of his blanket. "How many did you tell him?" 11. "How many do we have?" 17. He nodded once. "Good." Her hands were trembling now, not from the cold. Lying to a German with a pistol was not like lying to a hungry neighbor. This lay in the bones. Quiet fortitude was not always silent. Sometimes it was the exact timbre of a voice that did not crack when death stood 3 steps away. When the last German bootstep faded, the cellar did not relax all at once. Fear left in thin layers. First, the children started crying, quick, hiccuping sounds they had held back while the armed men were present. Then the burned woman began to pray under her breath in a flat monotone. Then Helena sat down hard on a crate and pressed both hands over her mouth. Zofia let them have 30 seconds. Then she clapped once. "Enough," she said, not harsh, but clear. "We need a count." Helena looked up, eyes wet. "They believed you." "For today," Zofia said. "Tomorrow they may not. Count." They moved through the cellar together. It was narrow work, weaving between cots and crates, ducking under the low ceiling. The air was stale now, soured by fear. Each face they passed looked at her like she was more than a nurse, like she was the person who had just argued with death and won a reprieve. "1," Helena said quietly, touching the old man's shoulder. "2," Zofia said at the burned woman. They went on. 3, 4, 5. At Captain Radecki's bed, Zofia paused to watch his chest, still moving, shallow, stubborn. 6. At the 2 immobile boys in the back, the ones the Germans must not see, she lowered her voice. 7, 8. "Why don't we move them?" Helena whispered. "Somewhere else, if they come again?" "Where?" Zofia said. "Everywhere is a cellar. Everywhere is under watch. At least here we know where the stairs creak." Helena bit her lip and nodded. By the time they finished, the number was still 17. The same 17 she had carried through the sewer, the same 17 she had lied about. 17, Helena said almost proudly. 11, Zofia corrected softly. "Today, for the Germans, we are 11. It wasn't a joke, but a few people smiled, weak and tired, a shared secret. Doctor. Wysocki eased himself off his stool and shuffled closer. "Show me the book," he said. Zofia's hand went automatically to her apron, then stopped. The cellar had just been searched. If they came back and she was caught with it in the open... "No," she said, "not here." Wysocki frowned. "I may need to adjust entries. The boy is worse." "I will write it," Zofia said. "You tell me, and I will write it." She crossed to the farthest corner, where a bit of wall jutted, making a small pocket of privacy. She turned her back to the room, pulled the ledger out, and opened it on her arm. Her fingers were still shaking from the confrontation. The pencil lead skittered on the paper. She wrote, "Boy, collapsed house, breathing shallow, keep in place. Do not move if street swept." Then she underlined the location twice. Behind her the burned woman said in a small voice, They will come back, won't they?" "Yes," Sophia said without turning. "This is their street, but they are busy. We make it not worth their time." "How?" the woman asked. "By being small," Sophia said. "By being quiet. By not dying loudly." When she finished, she did not put the ledger back on the shelf where it had been. Her gaze went there, to the gap between the medicine crate and the wall, a good hiding place, dry, invisible from the door. But now she saw Germans yanking the crate, saw pages scattering, saw one of them holding it up and grinning. She folded the book and slid it under her blouse again, against skin, binding her belt over it. "You'll sleep with it?" Wysocki asked, watching. "Yes." "That is not comfortable." "Being shot is less comfortable," she said. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You carry too much for one person." "There is no one else walking," she said, echoing his earlier line back to him, and saw from the flicker in his eyes that he remembered. For a moment, with the ledger warm and heavy, with the frightened eyes on her, a wave rose up in her, a hot, irrational urge to cry, to say I am tired, to say I almost told him, I almost said 17, that she had nearly betrayed the whole cellar because her knees had quivered. Instead, she walked to the water bucket, dipped her hands, and scrubbed them hard, nails against palm, letting the cold bite her back to the surface. Above, someone dragged furniture across a floor. German? Polish? It was impossible to tell through rubble. Helena approached, voice low. "Sister, if they count again and it is 17, then I will tell them 6 were moved," Sophia said at once, "that we obeyed, that they just missed them. And if they do not believe, then we make sure the 6 they cannot move are the 6 most hidden." She wiped her hands, met the girl's eyes. "It is a game now? We play until one of us is too tired." "You?" Helena said, frightened. Sophia glanced at the ledger, at the cots, at the boy breathing shallow. "No," she said. "Them." The cellar began, slowly, to sound like itself again. Low voices, a cough, the clink of glass. But something had shifted. Before, she had been a nurse. After the lie, she was something else. The one who stood at the bottom of the stairs when Germans came. In the quiet, she repeated the sewer list in her head. 17 Printing House, 9 Northern, 12 Main, Radecki chest, burned woman, over and over, so that if the book was ever torn from her, Warsaw would still live in her skull. The news came down the stairs in whispers like bad air. "Old Town is gone," a boy said from the hatch. "They pulled them out, some through the river. Some didn't make it." The cellar went still. Even people too weak to sit up turned their heads. Dr. Wysocki stopped reusing a bandage, a thing he never stopped doing, and looked at Sophia. She was tying off a splint on the burned woman's ankle. Her fingers paused. Old Town. The words were like a door slamming somewhere far away. If Old Town had fallen, the Germans were closing the fist. "Who told you?" she asked without looking up. "The runner from Krolewska." The boy's voice was too bright, trying to sound useful. "He said Germans have tanks in the squares. They are burning blocks. They shot anyone with an armband." A murmur rose. Not loud. No one in Warsaw shouted fear anymore, but low and tight, full of calculation. If they could take Old Town, why would they not take Śródmieście? How long until this street, this house, this basement? Helena said. "If they took them, they will come here." Her eyes were wide again. "Maybe it is better to go to the civilians' quarters. They do not shoot." "They shoot," the burned woman said dully. "They just do it slower." "Enough," Sophia said. She tied the splint hard enough to make the woman hiss. "We knew they would push." "But if everyone else is falling?" someone near the wall ventured. "If command cannot reach us." The thought hung there. Dangerous. "If command cannot reach us, we owe them nothing. If they cannot see, we can leave. We can open the door and slip to a cousin's flat and hope the Germans are busy." She heard it in their breathing, saw it in the way two men by the crates shifted toward their boots. If they started trickling away, the whole thing would collapse. Germans watched for movement. One careless exit, one door left ajar, and tomorrow's patrol would smell cellar. Zofia stood up. The room tilted for a second, lack of sleep, sewer chill still in her bones, but she steadied. She wiped her hands on her apron, making sure no blood showed, then faced them all. "Listen," she said. They did. Because she was the one who had lied to the Germans. Because yesterday, death had stood in the doorway and she had not flinched. "Old Town fought a month," she said. "We fight today. That is the work. The work is not to win the city. We do not have tanks. The work is to hold long enough for the next street to hold, and for the next wounded man to breathe." "That sounds like losing," someone muttered. "It is not losing," Zofia said, "if the man in that bed is still alive when the Germans go." "They are not going," the burned woman whispered. "They never go." Zofia looked at her, at the boy with the crushed side, at Radecki, eyes half open, listening, at Helena, trembling but upright. She could not tell them the truth she felt scraping inside her, that perhaps it would all end the same way, with a white flag and deportations, that perhaps all these careful lists would burn in a furnace, that she too sometimes wanted to sleep for a week and let someone else listen for boots. So instead, she said the only thing that was true and useful. "I will stay," she said, "here, in this cellar, until they take the house or until there is no one left to bandage." The words landed like a nail in wood. Heads lifted. Even Dr. Wysocki stared. "You don't have to," he said quietly. "You are the one who can move." "I am the one who has to show it can be done," Zofia said. "If I go, you will all go. If I stay, some of you will stay. That is how it works." Helena's mouth trembled with relief. "Then I will stay too," she said quickly, before fear could talk her out of it. "Child," Wysocki began. "You need hands," Helena said. "I will stay." The two men by the crates, the ones who had been thinking of leaving, exchanged looks. Leaving now, after the nurse and the girl had pledged to sit in a cellar under German boots, would make them cowards, even in their own eyes. "I can fetch water," one of them said grudgingly. "If the pump is not watched." "Good," Zofia said, as if she had expected nothing else. In her chest, something relaxed and something else tightened. She had chained herself to the room with one sentence. No more slipping through sewers to safer cellars if this one became too visible. No more choosing the rationale route. She was now the spine of this dark space. From above, the boom of artillery rolled again. Plaster sifted. Someone started a Hail Mary, then let it trail off. Prayers did not stop flamethrowers. Zofia crossed to the corner, checked the ledger, still there, still dry, and closed it without writing. She didn't need to. She knew all their faces now. If the book burned, she could tell someone, somewhere, later. There were 17 of us. We stayed. Quiet fortitude was sometimes nothing more than that, saying, "I will stay," on a day when everyone else had good reasons to leave. The chance came at dusk, in that thin gray hour when the Germans were changing shifts and the artillery quieted to reload. A runner from the next block dropped through their hatch like a cat. "They broke through the back wall to the Chaquiego cellars," he whispered, breath steaming in the cool air. "It's deeper there, less smoke. If you want to move anyone, it must be now, After dark, they will fire flares. Zofia looked around at her 17. Now. Before flares, before someone above decided this street was not worth keeping. How far? She asked. 2 courtyards, 1 wall. The boy shrugged in that Warsaw way that meant, we've seen worse. But you must not make noise. No noise, with wounded. She turned to Helena. Get the doors, and anyone who can walk, wrap up. We're moving. A murmur rose. Not panic, but brittle hope. People wanted to believe in deeper cellars, in thicker walls. Movement felt like survival. Not all, Zofia said, cutting it short. Some will stay. That stopped them. Dr. Wysocki's brows drew together. We can move. We cannot, Zofia said. We have 2 doors, 4 men, and rubble in the yard. We move those who can survive the trip and make room for air. If we try to drag everyone, we will block the stairs and the Germans will arrive and we will be a pile of bodies in the open. She hated how clear it sounded. Clarity made cruelty neat. She pointed quickly before doubt could creep in. Hania, the burned woman, she moves. The boy from the collapsed house stays. He will not survive the shaking. The old man with the leg stays. Captain Radecki. He must move, Wysocki said at once. If the Germans burn, he will die in the street, Zofia said. He is bleeding inside. 1 jar, 1 stone, he is finished. He stays in the corner, wrapped. If they come, he dies here, not on a door in front of everyone. The captain's eyes flickered. He had heard. Of course he had heard. She forced herself not to look apologetic. Dying in place was still dignity. Helena, pale, said, What about the mother who waited in the yard? She moves, Zofia said. She can sit. She can help in the other cellar. The woman's eyes filled. Zofia did not let herself watch that either. Outside, a shell landed 3 streets over. A dull, lazy thud. Time was narrowing. Wrap them, Zofia said. 1 blanket each, nothing metal to clatter. We go in 2 waves. The 4 available men, 2 fighters recovering, 2 older civilians, lifted the first door, with the burned woman and the shrapnel fighter who could almost walk. Zofia took point, peering up the stairwell. The street light was out. Good. Smoke still lay low. Better. She slipped out first. Evening had turned the street into a charcoal sketch. Broken cars, torn posters, a cart with its wheels gone. She listened. No German voices immediately near. From far off, a radio crackled in harsh German, then cut. Somewhere, a dog barked. Go, she hissed, and the men followed, carrying the door low, almost scraping. The wounded woman's breath came fast, from fear more than pain. They crossed the first yard, hugged the wall, slipped through the hammered hole into the next building. Dust billowed. Zofia covered her mouth, waving it down. On the other side, resistance volunteers waited, eyes wide, ready to pull the wounded through. 1 wave done. Back in the cellar, those marked to stay watched her like prisoners watching the warden. The boy with the crushed side said, Sister, I can hold on. I can... His voice broke. You will not hold on if they drop you, Zofia said, crouching so her face was level with his. Listen to me. Down there it is crowded. Air is bad. They will not have room for your breath. Here I can reach you. It is because I am not a fighter, he whispered, shame creeping in. Because I am only... It is because you are hurt, she said, sharper than she intended. Not because of worth. His eyes searched her face, wanting to catch her in a lie. Finding none, he nodded once, jaw trembling. She moved on. The old man with the wooden leg shrugged when she told him. I was born in Warsaw, he muttered. I can die in Warsaw. Captain Radecki opened his eyes fully. You are consigning me, he said, breath thin. "I am keeping you from dying in the rubble," Zofia said. "If they pass, you live. If they burn, it is fast." He held her gaze for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he smiled, not in mockery, but with the bitter recognition of a soldier who had also once triaged men. "Do it," he said. "Move the ones who can still run." The second wave formed. The mother, one child, the shrapnel man now with a makeshift crutch, and Helena carrying supplies. "Go," Zofia said. "I will close." Helena hesitated. "You said you would stay." "I will," Zofia said, "and I will come after if it is clear. Move." They went. The cellar was suddenly quiet. Only 5 beds occupied now, the too fragile, the too broken, the too important to jostle. The air felt bigger, every breath louder. Zofia went to the ledger. She added a note. Moved 6 to Chaquiego. 5 immobile. Do not attempt in open daylight. Then she underlined it twice, hard. Above, a flare hissed to life, German, white and cruel, washing the ruined street in light. Window closed. She sat back on her heels, hearing the boots in the distance again, and knew, from now on, whoever was still in this cellar was here to the end. The first sign was the smell. Not the ordinary burned brick, coal, and cordite smell that had become the city's skin. This was sharper, oily, with the sour tang of fuel. Zofia was checking Captain Radecki's bandage when it crept down the stairwell like a warning. She froze. Helena smelled it a beat later. "Petrol," she whispered, eyes wide. "Are they—" A thud upstairs. Then another. Germans moving furniture or dragging something heavy. Voices calling to each other in hard German, too many for a casual sweep. The floorboards groaned under real weight. Zofia's heart snapped into a faster rhythm. "Everyone who can breathe quietly, she said. "No crying now." She moved fast, muscle memory guiding her. Water bucket away from the door. If it spilled, it would give them away. Blankets over the faces of the ones with labored breath. The lamp turned lower, so the cellar looked smaller, poorer, not worth burning. Wisaki looked up from his corner. "Is it them?" "Yes." She kept her voice flat. "Flamethrowers, I think." He grimaced. "They're clearing." Another thud, then the distinctive metallic clatter of equipment being set down, tanks, hoses. She had heard that sound on other streets, and later seen only blackened holes. The patients had heard too. The burned woman whimpered like a child. "No, please, no fire." Zofia crouched by her, pressing the blanket to her shoulders. "Hush. If they don't hear us, they might pass." Might, not will. Boots came down the first flight of stairs, closer. A man barked an order. Another answered from outside, a call and response of men used to working with flame. Then, cutting through it, a thin, urgent tapping on the coal chute. Zofia's head snapped around. Helena went pale. "Now?" "Now," Zofia said. She yanked the chute open. A narrow, soot-smeared face appeared. The runner from Chaquiego, eyes fever-bright. "Sister," he hissed, "they're sealing the street from both ends. Command says, move the book now. They're burning the houses that don't give anyone up." Zofia stared at him. The smell of fuel thickened. Upstairs, boards were being kicked aside to make clear streams for fire. "Now?" she repeated. "Now," the boy insisted. "They said if they take this house, we lose your whole list. They need it on the other side before dawn. They said, tell her this is priority." Priority. Over the 6 unmovable. Over the promise she had made an hour ago. Behind her, the boy with the crushed side whispered, "Sister?" She couldn't turn to him, not yet. She looked at Waizaki. His lined face said he understood at once. "Go," he said. "You walk, we don't." "I said I would stay," she said, and hated how small it sounded against the thudding boots above. "You said it to keep them calm," Wysocki said. "They are calm. Now go." A harsh scrape from upstairs, a hatch being tested. German laughter, ugly and anticipatory. If they came in with fire, there would be no time to throw the ledger down a hole. Only time to burn, with it. Zofia reached under her blouse and pulled the book out. It was warm from her skin, a little damp at the edges. Holding it out here in open air with Germans overhead felt like holding a confession. The runner stretched his hand. "I can take—" "No," Zofia said at once. "You're a child. If they catch you in the yard—" He bristled. "I've run all day." "And now they are watching all day," she cut him off. "Show me the way. I will crawl." He looked like he wanted to argue, but another order barked upstairs, this time directly above the cellar ceiling. Dust rained. The burned woman cried out. "Go," Wysocki said again, sharper. "If they make a tunnel of fire, we will not be able to breathe, and the paper will burn." Zofia looked at her patients then. The 5 she had marked as too fragile to move, the ones she had essentially promised to die with. Their eyes shone in the lamplight, reflecting her back. She saw accusation there, but also something worse, dependence. "I will come back," she said, "if I can." It was the closest to a lie she had told all month. She slung her satchel, tucked the ledger inside, and ducked into the coal chute behind the runner. It was narrower than the sewer entrance, edges scraping her shoulders. Behind her, Helena closed the panel, shutting out the lamplight. Sudden dark. She crawled on elbows and knees through soot, breath shallow to make less noise. Above, boots. Then, sht! The low, terrifying hiss of fuel being tested. Her body wanted to back up, to burst through the panel and throw herself over the patients. The logic of the order dragged her forward. Names first, then faces. If the Germans had the names, they could kill faces in 4 districts. If the names lived, some faces somewhere might live. Ahead, the boy lifted another grate. Night air washed in, smoke heavy. "Quick," he whispered. "They're at the front already." She slid out into the courtyard, pressed flat to the damp wall. From here she could see, through a gap, the Germans in front of the house. One with the twin tanks on his back, one guiding the hose, one with a machine pistol watching the windows. Businesslike, efficient. She had minutes, maybe less. In her stomach the cellar sat like a stone, the burned woman, the boy, Radecki. She had walked away from them. Quiet fortitude, she thought bitterly, was sometimes just taking the wound in your back, not your face. "Which way?" she whispered. The boy pointed toward the sewer lid she had used before. "Then run," she told him. "If they see you, they'll shoot." He grinned fiercely. "They always shoot," he said, and darted off. Zofia took one last look at the house she had claimed, the house she had said she'd stay in. Then she ran for the dark mouth of the street. The courtyard was a throat of smoke. Zofia made it to the sewer lid, just as a gust of hot air rolled out from the front of the house. Not yet flame, but the prelude to it. Germans shouted to one another, their words bouncing off ruined walls. A flare of orange lit a window briefly, then vanished. They were testing angles. She dropped to one knee and worked her fingers under the iron lid. It was slick with rain and soot. For a sick second, she thought she wouldn't be able to lift it. That stupid, stupid metal would be the thing that killed a dozen hidden wounded. Then a pair of hands came out of the dark and helped from below. "Fast!" a young voice hissed. "I saw them." She recognized him. Merrick, the barely bearded orderly she'd sent on errands between cellars, cheeks smeared black, eyes bright with adrenaline. "You again," she whispered. "Good. Command said to pull you in," he said, "and the book. They said, if she falls, we cannot replace her." A terrible sentence to hear when your lungs were burning. Sophia glanced back toward the house. Through the gap, she could just make out the lower half of the German with the twin tanks. He was turning, waiting for the signal. If they poured fire down the stairwell, the cellar would become an oven. She could dive into the sewer now, lid down. Safe, or safer. The ledger would be with her. Command would applaud. She would have done what the uprising needed. And the burned woman would scream in the dark. "No," she said out loud, as if answering an accusation. Marek blinked. "No? I can't leave them," Sophia said. "They cannot move. If the fire comes, they will panic. Someone must stay to calm them." "You said you'd bring the book," Marek said, baffled. "They said—" "They talk from cellars that are not on fire," Sophia snapped, then forced herself softer. "Listen, you are faster than me, smaller. You can run bent. You can fit through the low section. Take it." She pulled the ledger out, hot now from running, and pressed it into his hands. His mouth actually fell open. "Me? Yes, keep it against your chest. If the water rises, hold it over your head. If they fire, drop flat and don't let go. On the other side, give it to command and tell them, Schrodmieście East has 5 immobile. 5. They stay." "They wanted you," Marek said in a small voice. "Not me." "They wanted the book," Sophia said. "Now they have it." He hesitated, fingers tightening over the damp cover. She saw every doubt in his young face. What if he ran too slow? What if he was searched? What if he said something wrong? She had no comfort to give except movement. "Go," she said, and put her hand on the back of his neck the way she had with frightened patience. "This is not glory. This is carrying paper. Do it." A crack sounded from the street, a door being blown in, or a shot. Marek flinched. Then he swallowed, slid down the hole like a rat and was gone, the ledger with him. Sudden lightness, sudden terror. Without the book, without the mission, she was just a woman standing in a courtyard, watching fire being prepared for the house where she had promised to stay. She pulled the sewer lid half over, leaving it loose so Marek could slam it from below if he needed to hide. For herself, it was now useless. She turned back toward the building. From inside the cellar, faint through walls and floor, she heard it, the high, thin cry of the burned woman. "Sister! Sister Sophia!" They had heard the Germans, too. Sophia ran. Through the back door, down the narrow hall where plaster dust fell like snow, down the steps 2 at a time. Heat already licked the air, not flame yet, but the breath of it pushed down by drafts. When she burst into the cellar, all 5 faces turned, wide, frantic, believing she had left forever, then breaking with relief when they saw her. "You came back," Helena said, as if surprised by a miracle. "Of course," Sophia said, trying to keep her own breath steady. "The book is gone. We are lighter now." Wysocki stared at her, understood at once. "Who has it?" "Marek. He can make it. He must." "Then we are committed," the doctor said softly. Above them, boots again. A man shouted, angry now. Maybe they had seen movement in the courtyard. Maybe they had smelled the open chute. Sophia crossed to the center of the room. "Listen to me," she said, and her voice cut through their panic. "They may burn, or they may not. If they come, we do not scream. We do not run. We stay low. We make ourselves not worth the trouble. If there is smoke, we crawl. If there is fire, we pray fast." The burned woman sobbed. Sophia took her hand. "This was always where we were going," she said, not unkind. "We just did not know the day." Her heart was hammering so hard it hurt. Without the ledger, without the order, there was nothing to justify being here except the promise she herself had made. That, too, was a kind of command. Upstairs, something heavy was dragged across the floor, and the first hot drip of burning fuel began to tap at the edges of the stairwell. The sound changed. Up to that moment it had been distant. Men outside, fire being readied, the language of violence still muffled by walls. Then, suddenly, it was inside the house. Boots on their staircase, boards protesting, German breath echoing down the shaft. The cellar shrank. Sophia stepped away from the beds and took position by the bottom of the stairs. Not directly under the opening, that would expose her, but a little to the side, where she could be seen first if they shone a light, where her body could fill the frame and make the room look smaller. "Blankets up," she whispered. "Over faces. Slow breaths." Helena slid to the floor beside the burned woman and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. The woman was shaking so hard the cot creaked. Sophia gave her a look, quiet, and Helena nodded, jaw clenched. Boots stopped on the landing above. Voices. Someone kicked a door open, the hollow bang of thin wood. Another voice called from outside, impatient. A man laughed. The smell of fuel thickened, hot and metallic, slithering down the stairwell ahead of the flame. "Please," Sophia thought, "not this house. There are others to burn. You said tomorrow. You said—" A flashlight beam stabbed down the stairs. It glanced off brick, off the low ceiling, off the first row of cots. Sophia stepped into it. She lifted her hand to shade her eyes and pitched her voice, bored, irritated, the tone of someone who had been interrupted in work, not someone hiding combatants. "Wounded here," she called in German. "Civilians. Nothing to take." The beam fixed on her. For an instant she was blind, only aware of her heartbeat and the ledger-shaped absence under her blouse. She saw the silhouette of a helmet, the black snout of a machine pistol at hip height. "WWII," the man barked. "5," she said at once. 5. The number was true now. "All cannot walk." Another voice came from above in German. "Any rebels?" "Nur Kranke," the man with the light yelled back. "Only sick ones." There was a pause, then maddeningly casual. "Then leave." Leave. Just like that, like sparing scraps. But the man with the light did not leave yet. He took 2 steps down, boots ringing hollow. Now she could see his face, young, sweaty, cigarette behind his ear. Not SS, just a soldier on house clearance duty. He peered past her, into the shadows. "You keep them here?" he said in awkward Polish. "Yes," Sophia said. "Elsewhere burns." He sniffed. "This also can burn." "We have water," she said. "We will not trouble you." His gaze slid over the cots. Helena had her head bowed, like a girl in church. The burned woman was rigid, eyes squeezed shut. Captain Radecki stared at the ceiling as if already gone. The boy with the crushed side had both hands over his mouth, knuckles white. The German squinted. Maybe he saw how thin they all were, how little threat. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he remembered a sister in Dresden or Hamburg who might one day lie in a cellar like this. "You stay down," he said. "No windows." "No windows," Sophia repeated. He raised the light again, nodded to someone above, and climbed. Sophia did not let her shoulders sag. Not yet. The search might return. Another man might decide to be thorough, and the fire team was still outside. She waited, listening. Upstairs, furniture scraped again, but away from the stairwell now, toward the front rooms. A door was flung wide. Men shouted to clear, clear. Then the unmistakable roar of the flamethrower. Not down, but out, across the front. Rooms to flush anyone still hiding there. Heat rolled through the floorboards. Smoke, thin and acrid, seeped down between planks. The burned woman whimpered. Zofia grabbed the water bucket and shoved it to Helena. "Wet the cloths, over mouths." She soaked rags and laid them over noses, working fast. "Small breaths," she murmured. "They're burning the front, not us. It will pass. Small breaths." The smoke thickened to a gauze. Not enough to kill, enough to sting eyes and raise panic. Above, flames crackled, hungry, devouring furniture, old curtains, old lives. "Will it come down?" Helena choked. "Not if we are quiet," Zofia said. "We make no noise, we make no fuss. We are not worth the fuel." That was the strategy of 1944 Warsaw, she thought grimly. To become so poor, so broken, so full of wounded that even the occupier decided you weren't worth a tank of petrol. Minutes, or hours, crawled. Time was elastic in smoke. Eventually the roar of the flamethrower eased. Boots moved again, men calling to each other about fertig, finished. A truck engine coughed to life. Doors slammed. Then, unbelievably, the weight in the house lessened. They were leaving. Zofia counted to 60, then to 60 again. Only when the outer street quieted did she let herself slide down the wall to sit on the floor, lungs burning, arms limp. Helena crawled to her and gripped her wrist. "They didn't take you," she whispered, half ecstatic, half dazed. "They didn't take us." "Not today," Zofia said. Smoke scratched her throat. "Tomorrow is another question." In her head, she saw Marek in the sewer with the ledger, water to his knees, repeating names as she had. One book moving away from the fire, one nurse choosing to stand in it. That, she thought, was the shape of it. Some carried the future, some held the present so it didn't break. "Rest," she told the room. We stayed. Outside, the house crackled faintly, blackened in front, alive in back, like Warsaw itself. After fire, there was always a kind of stunned silence, as if the building was listening to itself to see if anything else would fall. It was that way now. The front rooms smoldered above them, occasionally sending down a soft crackle and a drift of hotter smoke. The cellar, though, held stone and earth and stubborn Polish carpentry. The Germans had taken what they wanted and gone. Night pressed in. Zofia moved through the low room with a candle stub cupped in her palm, the flame making her fingers glow. The air was sour from smoke and wet cloth, but breathable. She checked each of the 5 as if on rounds in a real hospital. Pulse, breath, bandage dryness, eyes. A routine from a vanished world applied to a basement in a dead city. The burned woman's hand was hot, but not hotter than before. "You stayed," the woman whispered, voice hoarse. "I thought you left." "With the boy." "I sent the boy with the book," Zofia said quietly. "I do not leave patients." The woman's lids fluttered in relief, the kind you only saw when someone had truly expected abandonment. He will make it? Zofia did not know. The sewers could flood. Germans could be bored and shoot at a Russell. Marek could panic. Any of 100 knife points could cut that thin thread of hope. "Yes," she said. "He knew the way." There was no triumph in saying it, only decision. She had chosen to believe in something she could not see, because the alternative, to imagine pages soaked and torn, names dissolving, would poison the room. She moved to the boy with the crushed side. His breath came shallow, but steadier now that screaming fire was not a sound in his ears. She adjusted his blanket, smoothed sweat-matted hair from his forehead. He opened his eyes. "Is it morning?" he whispered. "Not yet." "Are they coming back?" "Not tonight." He stared at the ceiling beams, the candlelight flickering on their rough-hewn surfaces. "You could have gone," he said. "When they called you. I heard. You could have gone." "I did go," Sophia said, "to give them what we had. But you came back." "Yes? Why?" "Because you cannot walk." She said it as plainly as water. "Because someone must be here to say your name if the house falls, because I promised." His eyes shone wet, whether from pain or from that. She couldn't tell. "My name is Powell," he said, as if offering it to be carried too. "I know," she said. She had written it 3 times today. She had said it in a sewer. "Powell from the collapsed house. You are in the book." "In the book." He let his eyes close, as if that was a kind of immortality, to be ink in a ledger moving somewhere safer than a burning street. Sophia blew on the candle to steady the flame and went to Captain Radecki. He looked worse in the aftermath, gray, drawn, eyes deep. Smoke did bad things to chests like his. "You sent it out," he rasped. "Yes." "Good." A shallow breath. "Sectors. Forget. Paper remembers." She nodded. He knew. Officers understood what lists meant. Water was low. She rationed it to sips, dampening mouths, wiping smoke soot from nostrils. Helena watched, eyes red from smoke and from having held herself together for too long. "We have almost nothing," the girl said. "We have enough for tonight," Sophia said. "Tomorrow we steal again." Helena swallowed. "What if tomorrow there is nowhere to steal from?" "Then we use boiled cloth. Then we break apart shirts. Then we cut blankets. Then we use nothing." Sophia glanced around the cellar. Scorched, stripped, still alive. "Warsaw has been doing nothing for 5 years. We can do it for 1 more night." She said it with a humorless little twist of the mouth, and to her surprise, Helena let out a trembling, smoky laugh. Up above, wind shifted, dragging smoke away. For a brief moment, clear, cold September night air slid down the stairwell. It smelled of river, ash, and the faintest trace of autumn, of a world still turning even while this city burned. Sophia sat finally, back to the wall, legs stretched, candle stub on a crate. Fatigue roared up. Not the kind sleep fixed, the kind that lived in marrow. She thought of Marek. Damp hair, ledger clutched, lips moving with names. She thought of the officer in the ruined tenement, tracing routes on a map. She thought of the districts already dark, already emptied, all of them threads, all of them fraying. It would be easy, so easy, to decide it was pointless. That tomorrow the Germans would torch this house too. That no one would ever read the page where she had underlined 5 immobile. But work did not care about outcome. Bandages had to be changed even on men who would die at dawn. Bread had to be shared even if tomorrow brought no sack. The act itself was the point. She took the ledger out one last time, more for comfort than for need, and ran her fingers over the cover, feeling where her body heat had warped it slightly. "You're free now," she murmured to it, to the absence. "So I can stay." She put it back. Not under her blouse, there was no ledger to hide now, but under her palm, over her own ribs, as if to replace one heartbeat with another. Dawn would come gray and unfriendly. Germans might return. Command might not send word that the book arrived. None of that could change what they had done tonight. "We stayed," she said into the dim, in Polish, so the room would remember the words. "We stayed." The cellar, exhausted, breathed with her. The street looked smaller in daylight, not because it had actually shrunk, but because so many of the houses were gone. Fire had eaten them to the bones. Windows stared like sockets. On some facades, German notices flapped, stark black letters ordering civilians to assemble for evacuation, to leave the city, to stop fighting a fight already ground into dust. Zofia stood in the cellar doorway, one hand on the rough frame, blinking into the pale September sun. Smoke stains ran up the walls in uneven fingers. The air was cold and dry now, the night's damp had burned off. Somewhere toward the river, a German band played a stiff march. Absurd in a city of ashes. "They are making us go," Helena said beside her, clutching her bundle, no more than a pillowcase of clothes. "Everyone from this block. They say hospitals will be outside." "Outside where?" Zofia asked. "In Pruskov, maybe, or farther." "Of course. Clear the city, break its spine, leave only ruins for winter." Behind them, in the half-dark of the cellar, the 5 were now 3. The old man with the wooden leg had died quietly, toward dawn, as if decided by the smoke. Captain Radecki was not moving, but his eyes were still clear. Powell was weaker. A German corporal, young, red-eared in the chill, strode over, rifle on his shoulder. "Alle raus," he said, bored. "Everyone out. Sick also." "They cannot walk," Zofia said in Polish. "You carry," he said, jerking his chin at the doorway, "or we leave." It was the last humiliation. To be forced to expose the very people she had kept hidden, to parade them in daylight before the men who had hunted them. But the fire teams would come again, and there would be no cellar left. She turned. "We are going," she said to the room. "Slowly, but we are going." Wysoki, gaunter than ever, took one end of a door. Zofia took the other. Together they slid it under Powell, who grimaced but did not cry out. Helena bundled blankets around the burned woman. As they reached the threshold, a figure from the neighboring ruins limped over, the mother from days ago, the one Zofia had delayed at the yard. Her ankle was better bound now, and in the crook of her arm a thin child clung. "You are alive," Zofia said, a little surprised at hearing warmth in her own voice. "Because you sent me that day," the woman said simply. Her eyes were wet, smoke-reddened. "They burned the house after. If we had stayed?" She shook her head. Then, louder, to the people queuing in the street, to 2 men helping their own wounded, she said, "This is the nurse who stayed when the Germans came. She lied to them." Zofia froze for a heartbeat. The words hung there, small and sharp, in the ruined street. The nurse who stayed. One of the men looked over, a man from another cellar, another life, and nodded as if he had been told this story already by someone else. "I heard," he said. "They said a nurse in Śródmieście did not run." So it had traveled, through sewers, through courtyards, through whispered lines over bandaged heads. Not her name, no one said Zofia Lewandowska like on a hospital form, but her act. She stayed. The German corporal, hearing Polish he didn't follow, scowled. "Schnell," he said. "Move." They moved. Out of the cellar that had been a whole world, into the street that had been a killing ground, toward an assembly point that would be the start of exile. Zofia walked backward a few steps, helping guide the door with Powell on it, watching her cellar recede, the dark mouth where she had said yes to too many burdens. She thought suddenly of the ledger, out there, in another cellar, maybe already being recopied by a clerk with clean hands. Maybe Marek had stumbled in soaking and breathless, slamming it on a table, saying, "From Śródmieście East, 5 immobile." Maybe someone had frowned, annoyed, and added a line. Maybe not. Maybe it had taken fire somewhere else. It didn't matter, because in this street, in this ruined quarter, the people who had seen the inside of that room would carry the version that mattered, Not the numbers, but the witness. As they passed the shell of the front rooms, she saw how close it had been. Walls blackened, beams split. Another meter of flame, another whim from the NCO, and there would have been no story at all. Powell craned his neck on the door to look up at her. "Will they know?" he whispered. "That we were here?" "Yes," Zofia said, steady. "Someone always knows." Ahead, the column of civilians shuffled toward the square, blankets, bundles, faces set. German guards flanked them, bored, ready to move on to the next block. The city groaned softly underfoot. Zofia tightened her grip on the door. Her hands were raw, nails broken, sleeves singed. The hands of someone who had worked and worked in dark places. No medals would pin to them. No diary would record her rank. But when the mother from the yard reached another group of women, she said it again with the same certainty. There was a nurse who stayed. And that, Zofia thought, was enough. She walked on, out of the street that had tried to burn her, carrying what was left.